something basic, something dangerous, is eating away at the morality, the dignity and respect of our citizens. And that brings me to the question I want you to ponder tonight. Is this the time in our nation's history for our federal government to ban Almighty God from our schoolrooms?
As I look at our country today, we are godless. If you look at everything that's going on in our country, it's because we have literally taken God out of it. And people think a simple prayer is enough, but if we were all in that space, we would be able to trust our neighbor more.
Yeah, when prayer was in God, this was fundamentally people just believed in that and had a set standard and a law, you know, a biblical law. And I think this made people accountable for their behavior. I think that holds us to a standard. It keeps reminding us constantly we are being held to a standard of God. All right, so hi guys. Welcome back to our channel. So Barry Goldwater, first of all, they've painted this man, prior to me, you know, doing any research on anyone, they painted this man as if he's the biggest racist in the world. He had no idea what he was talking about. He was foolish talk. Just talked. Everything he said, it just never made any sense. This is what people were saying about Barry Goldwater. And then we saw this video of him. And was he at the convention?
Yeah, I think he just got, he was their nominee. He became the Republican nominee. I mean, he got his self handed to him. I mean, he got beat.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty badly.
He got beat bad.
You know, I mean, LBJ, I think we were in middle of war, so no one really wanted to change presidents.
Yeah.
And the Civil Rights Bill was being decided. He disagreed with it. But he didn't agree with it. He disagreed with it. So there was a lot of reasons. They really painted him as a racist. Yeah. And I don't.
That was just the end for him.
He's not a racist. I mean,
that was just the end for him. After that, forget that. Yeah. Once they paint you as a racist, forget it. It's over. But anyways, so we saw this video of him, and I'm sure you guys have seen this. I'm not sure if you guys have or not, but we want to play the whole thing all the way through. But it's like 22-minute video, so it's gonna be. This might be a part 2. This video might be a part 2. So anyways, we're gonna watch this and see what you guys think about it. But I love what he was saying in this video.
Because you know, when I look at old videos, especially like people like Paul Harvey, another man, broadcaster, who it's amazing that how many people saw what we are dealing with today. They saw it then, and they had the wisdom to see it. And Barry Goldwater, you know, he's a very smart man, very, very smart man, but he saw it, and I'm watching this this speech, and I'm thinking to myself, man, it's just like looking at Paul Harvey.
I said in my opening speech, there's a stir in the land, and there's a mood of uneasiness. We feel adrift in an uncharted and stormy sea. We feel we've lost our way. As I say, I used those words in launching my campaign for the presidency of the United States, and they're words of great sorrow. For nothing is more tragic than to speak of drift and decay in your own native land. Why do we see wave after wave of crime in our streets and in our homes? Why do we see riot and disorder in our cities, a breakdown of the morals of our young people, an alarming rise in juvenile delinquency, an increasing flood of obscene literature, corruption around our highest offices, erosion of the honor and dignity of our nation and of the individuals who compose it? Now, you and I know the tragic answer to these questions. And the answer is that the moral fiber of the American people is beset by rot and decay. And the most tragic thing of all is that this decay has made its most virulent attack upon our young people. Just listen, for example, to what J. Edgar Hoover, a very faithful and impartial servant of the people, had to say about the recent wave of rioting. And I read, while adult troublemakers often incited the riots, the mob violence was dominated by the acts of youths ranging in age up to the middle 20s. They were variously characterized by responsible people as school dropouts, young punks, common hoodlums, and drunken kids. Rioting by these young people reflects an increasing breakdown across the nation in respect for the law and the rights of other people to be secure in their person and their property. And that's what Mr. Hoover said about it. And in this same report, Mr. Hoover points out that juvenile arrests for serious crimes have been rising 3 times as fast as the juvenile population. In fact, crime as a whole is rising 5 times faster than the population growth. Now just stop and think with me a moment about what a serious thing is happening in this land of ours. You and I know that the elders of every generation always shake their heads and wonder what's becoming of the younger generation. I know my parents did, and I have to admit, not always without reason. But is that all there is to it now? Are we just watching the normal pranks and rebellion of youth coming of age? Well, I might say that's the easy answer to give. It's certainly the comforting answer, and some Americans may be reassuring themselves tonight by saying it. But deep down, in the depth of our hearts, you and I know this is not the answer. We know something much more fundamental is at work. Something basic, something dangerous is eating away at the morality, the dignity and respect of our citizens, old as well as young, high as well as low. And that brings me to the question I want you to ponder tonight along with me. My fellow Americans, is this the time in our nation's history for our federal government to ban Almighty God from our schoolrooms? I'll remind you that for almost 90 years in the life of our country, children regularly said prayers in the public schools of states permitting it. And nobody in authority said it was against the Constitution to open or close the school day with a prayer that children of all faiths could join in offering if they wished to.
We went to a school, we went to my mother was a single mother, our mother was a single mother, so she there was a sort of daycare that they watched.
It's like an after school program.
It was like a daycare, but then they would take your kids to the school, and then you come back and wait for your parents. But at that place, not at the actual school, we said prayer. So
and we said prayer, and it's like it wasn't like it's funny, and we weren't raised religious,
right?
But there was something. I would say this even in retrospect, but even then there was still something about prayer felt like community. A little bit, and then like in retrospect, I think now it's very comforting to even know that we did that, or even like the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, we used to say the Pledge of Allegiance
in school.
Yeah,
we used to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and now they just take all this out, and that's concerning to me because I feel like we were a better society when we were saying prayer and we were doing the Pledge of Allegiance. We were patriots and we liked our country, and you know what I mean.
And now it's popular for again, we took prayer and we took the Pledge of Allegiance because Danielle's right. I remember when we were younger, the PA would come on and say everybody stand for the Pledge. We put our right hand or we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and which I never had a problem with. I like the Pledge of Allegiance, but now it seems like they've taken those things out and they put in BLM flags and as much and LGBT flags. And so I just think that again, people could say, "Oh, what if you don't believe in God?" Well, you're going to worship something.
Yeah. Right.
So what are you doing? Worship the gays?
Right.
Worshiping black skin?
Right. Right.
And all that worship that we've done has turned into nothing but nonstop, protest and anger and frustration and TikTok after TikTok of young people just trying to be victims in some sort of way.
Like they said, they tried to paint it as unconstitutional.
And he said you could pray if you wanted to.
Yeah. You don't have to pray.
But during this time, kids had better grades. Kids were better.
They're respectful.
But what he saw, this was 1964. So what he saw was a change. And at the end of the 60s, by the time after this, LGBT got, then the 60s did change. We changed dramatically.
The flower child.
The country was turned upside down.
Nobody said it was unconstitutional for a child to say grace for his fellow pupils before a meal. Yet 2 years ago, the Supreme Court struck down this tradition long honored in practice. The justices ruled that it was contrary to the First Amendment of the Constitution. And mind you, the session in which this ruling was handed down was opened, as all sessions are, by the bailiff's invocation, "God save the United States and this honorable court." Now, millions of Americans have since expressed disapproval of this federal banning of worship in public schools. And several proposed amendments to the Constitution permitting prayers in schools have been drafted, and I am a co-sponsor of one of those. But I don't wish to discuss the merits of the various draft amendments. My purpose tonight, if you will permit me, is much broader. I want instead to examine with you the basic issue of worship in our public schools. Ours is both a religious and a free people. Over years past, we have encountered no difficulty in absorbing that religious character into our state institutions, while at the same time preserving religious liberty and separation of church and state. It was Alexis de Tocqueville, that uncanny commentator on American life, who observed over a century ago, "Religion in America takes no direct part in the government of society, but it must nevertheless be regarded as the foremost of the political institutions of that country." And I might remind you in that respect of a very simple truth, one that we are prone to forget, that we as a people, for the first time in man's history, in man's long search for freedom, recognized that freedom was an endowment of our Creator. And we said so in our Declaration of Independence.
Everett Ellison said.
Vince says this all the time, and I can't hear this enough.
And this is why I think God is so important.
So important.
Because your country, you're given freedom through Christ. You're not getting freedom through people. You know, I don't understand why they would say that was against the Constitution. Well, I'm assuming that they're saying because I think JFK was the one who struck down the to pray in school.
Yeah.
He took that out.
Yeah, he took it out.
And he said it was responsibility of the home, which I don't disagree with. But what I'm saying is that what did it really hurt?
Yeah.
And if you look at, I think you look at the Constitution, education is not in the Constitution.
That's what I'm saying.
Mostly it was because before when they were writing it, most people got their education in their homes.
Yeah.
They did homeschool.
Or
they did those one-room school rooms.
Yeah.
Which
I heard those were better.
The show Waltons.
By the way,
Waltons, that was kind of one-room school, like Little House on the Prairie school. They did that. It was the responsibility of the community to educate the kids, or the home to educate your kids. Public education, which is when we all started sending our kids to public education. They lure you in, and then they tell you, oh, look, you go and pray and pledge allegiance. They start
indoctrinating.
They start indoctrinating, slowly taking away things. And this is why I believe in homeschooling, because I do believe public education is very toxic. I think if you have a child, you need to take them right out.
In public schools, kids can tell things to the teacher, and the teacher is allowed to keep things, important things from the parent.
Yeah,
like this is where that should not be permitted.
Your teacher is not supposed to be your parent.
Yeah,
they're supposed to teach, but they're trying to parent your kids.
Yeah,
and I just think that this is why I don't go get down with single motherhood, because if you have a 2-parent home, you can homeschool. One person can go to work, and the other person can homeschool your kid. Vodi Bakum already said it's cheaper. It's the cheapest education is to educate your own children. It's more expensive to send them to school.
Right.
Even private school, it's even more expensive. You know, but
when you have a 70% single mother rate going on,
then you got to send your kid to a government school,
right? And so then you're stuck with the indoctrination.
Yeah,
and you probably yourself are indoctrinated anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But yeah,
but even when both people work,
yeah,
you know what I mean. It's just like if you are someone who doesn't need to work, you could literally be educating your child, and that to me means more than trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
We are a religious people. We are a strongly spiritual people, or we have been. And because of this and this only, we have become a great material people. And the danger I sense tonight and today is that too many Americans look upon the measure of greatness and the test of freedom in a material way. How many cars do we have? What's the average income? What's the gross national product? And I think it's time in America that we remember these simple, wonderful, beautiful things about our government before we've gone too far in the other direction. I was speaking
We see a wave of materialism right now too, though. The materialism is what gets people in this, well, broke. That's one.
Right.
And two, keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's right. If we, that's where the moral fiber goes, right? We're trying to impress others instead of do what's good for your morality, your family, yourself. You know, we do these things where we're consumerism.
Right.
You just want to buy and buy. How many cars, like you said, how many cars do we actually have? How many do you need? How many handbags do you need?
How much clothes do you need?
How many clothes do you need?
Really? How many handbags do you
yeah.
need? Do you need to get your nails done all the time?
Right.
Do you need, to me, that you could get rid of that, and you could focus on your family, your children, cooking, making sure your kids are eating healthy food and not fast food. You know what I mean? Things that help you internally and spiritually and mentally. And, you know, I just think that we focus on these, that's what I'm saying. The TV is so powerful.
Yeah.
And the internet is so powerful. When you see people like keeping up with the Kardashian, it makes you feel like you want to keep up with them.
Well, I think there's a focus, though, on really just being rich.
Yeah.
It's like we've lost focus of the middle class. Oh, actually, most people strived and thrived to be middle class, not rich.
Yeah.
Most people used to want that. You know, there's always going to be rich people. We get that. And I'm not suggesting that you can't thrive to be rich if you want to be rich. That's not the point of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there is a lot of character in the middle class, and there's a lot of integrity and sense of community in the middle class. You know what I mean? Like there's that. I think we've lost that. You know, it's like just people want to be on jets. They want to have the handbags. They want to have the, you know, they just want to keep up with the Joneses.
And one of the biggest flaws of the 50s that, I mean, they don't talk about it too much, was that consumerism became a really big thing because television was introduced.
Ads and stuff
and
like
so
that,
ads and stuff started being pumped out on the internet. So people wanted to live really well. You know what I mean? And so, as you can see, as we keep going further, the more we focus on money, the more we get depressions.
Yeah, that's fast.
And we get, you know what I mean? So
That's
it's just
true.
like, even when you get to the 70s, the economy was horrible. And a lot of that was because of wars, but a lot of it mostly is because we're not satisfied. We're never satisfied with anything. We have one car, we need two cars, we need three cars, we need four cars, we need our hair done, our nails done. We have to buy lots more clothes. We have to go do this. Our kids have to go to this place and that. And we never focus on the fact that really none of that stuff matters that much.
It's like the bigger, better deal mentality.
Right.
It'll never be enough.
These simple truths shine forth in almost every page of our founding documents, in the opening and closing sentences of our Declaration of Independence. And it's shown forth on the very day when Congress passed the First Amendment to the Constitution. On that occasion, both houses called jointly upon the President to proclaim a day of public thanksgiving and prayer. And I quote, "for the many signal favors of Almighty God." The coin and the currency we carry in our pockets are constant reminders of our nation's trust in God. Our Pledge of Allegiance, the oaths we subscribe to in court, both are testaments to that faith and trust. I am opposed, General Eisenhower has recently said, to any effort to eliminate mention of God in governmental institutions and practices. Our form of government rests upon a religious faith, and scores of prominent Americans have signified agreement with these sentiments. The National Governors Conference has twice recorded its approval of a prayer amendment, both times by overwhelming majorities. 7 governors of our states from both political parties are members of the board of the Constitutional Prayer Foundation. 6 other governors list themselves as official supporters of this non-sectarian and nonpartisan organization dedicated to passage and ratification of a prayer amendment. Other distinguished clergymen, laymen, and governmental officials hold the same posts. The legislatures of 8 states have supported some form of prayer amendment. So have the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the United States Junior Chamber of Commerce, the National Conference of Catholic Youth, and the National Association of Evangelicals. I can't get that word out. Many congressmen from both parties report massive support for a prayer amendment by their constituents. And in brief, there is clearly a deep and widespread public interest, nonpartisan and non-sectarian in nature, in rectifying the Supreme Court's decision through the amendment process. But the disturbing thing to me, even though we recognize that time has surely come for Congress to put the question to the test, will the Congress pass it? Because there's an amazing and disturbing amount of activity opposed to the introduction of any such amendment. It's way past time for Congress to pass this amendment and place it before the various states for ratification. And I challenge the Congress to do it with this one simple statement. What do they fear? Do they fear the American people? Why not give the American people the chance to vote on this? Ladies and gentlemen.
And you know, the funny thing is that I know people like prayer is important. You know what I mean? And as I look at our country today, we are godless. If you look at everything that's going on in our country, it's because we have literally taken God out of it. And people think a simple prayer is enough, but if we were all in that space, we would be able to trust our neighbor more.
Yeah.
We would have better schools. We would have better food. We would have because there are morals that we're lacking.
There's values.
There's values, that we're lacking, and this is the reason why our country has run amok and become such a bad. Our country's not good right now. It's still better than most, but we are dangerously getting close to ripping up America.
Yeah. The like he's talking about the moral fiber of the country. You know,
right.
Because your character is deeply rooted in God. You know what I mean? Like it's deeply rooted in that, and I think that we've lost our character. A lot of our country just looks like it's just run. And again, I hate to keep saying this, but we saw that it worked when prayer was in God. This was like fundamentally people just believed in that and had a set standard and a law, you know, a biblical law to follow. They literally followed it, right? And I think this made people accountable for their behaviors. I personally believe that, you know, Christ, you know, religion in general, specifically Christianity, because it's Christian. I'm Christian. I feel like that is law. And I think that holds us to a standard. It keeps reminding us constantly we are being held to a standard of God, you know, and there's a higher power that you need to be living up to here. You know what I mean? So when you remove that, there is no standard anymore. We have no more, there's nothing to follow. Follow what? Follow what law? What law? So now we have lawlessness and we have poor behaviors. We have debauchery. You know what I mean? We have all of these things just kind of get seeped in there and there's no protection. You know, and I know people, I know people that I know people have gotten very uncomfortable. I mentioned this before about us speaking about Christ and God and, you know, Jesus, religion in general, right? They don't like it. No, I am a believer. This is what it is. You're not going to tell me that I'm not going to put God first in all of this mess. You're not going to do that. And I feel like him Barry doubling down on this whole part of his speech was extremely important because even he's understanding that the importance of God and religion keeps people in a standard.
Because what was next, and the next half of the 60s was self-worship.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Let's worship our ovaries. Let's worship our blackness. Let's worship being gay. Let's worship all those things, but let's not worship God. And by the way, black people, even though it was a Jim Crow era, black people's lives were better.
Yeah, they were.
We had black businesses. We had families that were. We didn't have the single mother rate. Our rate was under 20%. You know what I mean? We didn't have the single mother rate. We had better schools.
This isn't
our neighborhoods, like Robert Woodson said. An elderly man could walk down his neighborhood and not get beat up by his grandchildren's generation.
What she's saying is not an opinion. This is facts. This is on the books. This is facts.
So our lives were better during Jim Crow, and I know that's hard to hear because you think how, but look how we are now. Look at the state of even black people. Look at the state of white people. When we stop worshiping the higher power, we start worshiping the state. When we start worshiping the state, we start worshiping ourselves. And we think that the government's going to come help us.
Because the single mother rate in the white community has doubled too. Yeah. So I'm just saying, it's low. Yeah. It's low.
It's lower than ours, but it's
double.
It's triple. What Larry Elder says, tripled now. You guys are where we were.
Yeah.
And even when we had a single mother rate in the 20s, 20 percentile, that was still considered high back in those days.
It's rare.
Because I think the white community was like 2%. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But I don't think he
puts God and family first. And that is what matters. These politicians and these parties, look, I vote Republican because I am conservative and I believe in those values. Right. I believe that my worldview is biblical. So I believe in those values. I can't vote for abortion and LGBT and women's rights and all of that.
It's a distraction.
So I can't vote for that. Yeah. For a party that platforms those lock, stock, and barrel. They platform that. But the Republican Party is just 8 years away from what the Democratic what the Democratic Party was 8 years ago.
Yeah, pretty soon. Like Kara said before in another video, last video, it's turning into like a uniparty.
So we don't have a change of heart.
Yes.
And we don't have a change of focus.
Yes.
Then what we're going to focus on are just problems. And we're going to focus on these people who are flawed, because we're all flawed, and government people are people. Yeah, they're flawed. And they can be greedy and mean, corrupt, just like anybody else. And if we put all our faith in them, then what we're saying is they are God. Yeah. And they can make everything better.
Think about these things. They're very simple. They're very basic. They're not complicated. But they're things that Americans in too great numbers do not understand. Because they are simple. Many Americans don't like simple things. That's what they have against we conservatives. They want complicated answers that only bring control over your lives. We look to history. We want to preserve the best qualities of history so that we can advance on those qualities. And we conservatives of both parties know that the real strength of America is to be found in America's families